So like many of you, I've wanted Nintendo now to take their Mario Maker series and give that same treatment to many of their iconic games, most notably Zelda, and that doesn't seem to be happening even though it seems like an obvious idea. So here comes a Super Dungeon Maker to take on the challenge for itself. The questions really are though, can it deliver an experience that is worth your cash, and like its influences, will it keep you coming back? Well, that's what we are here to look at today. My name's Alex, this is SwitchCorner, and if you do enjoy the video today, consider subscribing, it helps out the channel a huge amount. Super Dungeon Maker lacks a story, which is immediately disappointing, therefore we'll be jumping straight into the gameplay, which consists of two elements, dungeon crawling and dungeon building. And when it comes to exploration, the controls here are straightforward and they will not surprise anyone. You can move and you can attack. As you do progress through the many dungeons, however, you will unlock various abilities. One aspect I really appreciate here is that each dungeon resets your skill set, meaning you'll always begin with just an attack and then you'll be growing out the character from there. Some examples of these abilities include a dodge roll, which also allows you to clear gaps, a grappling hook, a shield, and a bomb. Each ability interacts with the environment in many different ways, but the goal here, it remains constant. Navigate through the dungeon and find the golden egg. This is often located across multi-floored dungeons. You can expect here to encounter various hazards such as traps, enemies, minor environmental puzzles, and think secrets like hidden passageways behind walls or pits that even lead to the floor below. I did find the variety of enemies enjoyable, and the flexible design of the locations and entertaining hazards added to the experience. However, I didn't particularly enjoy the pits part I mentioned. Kind of trial and error nature of it. By dropping down, it often resulted in simply taking damage and then respawning in the same spot. Currently though, the game has 5 hearts for health, and it has been relatively easy outside of that one minor issue. In fact, I haven't experienced a death unless I deliberately forced it, which only led to a simple continue screen to jump immediately back in. Now when you do pause the game, you can exit the dungeon as you please, you can restart the dungeon, you can also manipulate some basic audio related options. However, I would have appreciated more in-game instructions. You know, while not essential, it's always nice to peek at the controls and even customize some options. In between dungeons then, we can visit an overworld location, which is a great idea, but I feel that it is lacking in execution. There are some dungeons scattered around the world, but mostly there are NPCs with only a single line of dialogue. Don't really add much to the game, honestly. And yes, basically the characters look great, the world looks great, but the game really does kind of lack personality in its current state. A great example of what could have been though, the opening tutorial of dungeon is fantastic. It highlights how good even a short adventure could have been in this world. However, I must also add here, there's not a huge amount of options either. There's a few game created locations, and then of course a faster number of user created ones. All of this is not necessarily a bad thing, really, that is what you are coming for. I still think it needed more options, such as building a collection of levels so that creators could put in place a series, or even an option, think like the 100 life challenge in Mario. The feedback system is limited as well to a like or dislike system, and I really would have loved to have seen some sort of indication of difficulty as well. Fortunately, the game does have subcategories that define the stage type, including new, highest rated, and most popular. This is always helpful because there's a lot of quality levels here you want to find, but also then there's a lot of janky ones that you'll want to avoid, and this, it just makes that process a lot easier. However, I must be honest here, while the gameplay is more than competent and achieves what it attempts to do, it is not holding my attention. After playing a couple of 1-hour sessions, it just began to feel quite repetitive. The top-down nature of the game, it just doesn't allow for the level of creativity you can find in Mario Maker, or at least the community hasn't found that just yet. It's also worth noting as well, throughout my time with the game, the overworld at many of the dungeons, the frame rate is variable. It seems to be bouncing between 30 and 60, but it is quite noticeable, and I did experience drops on multiple occasions. It's definitely a bigger factor when you see a significant number of obstacles or enemies in a single location, so you're really going to need to watch out what the creator's been doing with their particular design. The big issue there though, holding my attention, for me that stems from the builder, and while the system is fine and easy to control, there's just not a huge amount of variety in there. You know, the options available include adding doors, flooring types, expanding walls, a few select enemies, and hiding some chests. It needs not only more obstacles, but also more variety in its design, you know, visually, such as walls and floors, so it doesn't become visually repetitive as well alongside that gameplay. Personally, I'm not a big builder myself. I've always struggled with it. I just don't have those kind of creative juices, I guess. One thing though that did surprise me when I look at this system is it's incredibly easy to use. Anyone could absolutely pick it up, but it lacks touch controls, which seems like a complete oversight because it is essentially a cursor-based system that would have not only made life a whole lot easier, but it would have absolutely been the perfect way to control it. Finally, for the gameplay, one message at the start of the game when you boot up gives me hope. At the same time, though, completely confuses me. It warns that the game is still a work in progress, but I thought this release was the game coming out of early access. In any case, though, like, more work can only be a good thing. It is clear that a ton of passion has gone into this game, but now it just needs more variety in its design, more options to keep players on their toes, and more content that's perhaps a little more linear, such as a story, or at least some, challenges where we can play a certain grouping of locations, and it very much gives us a purpose to push forwards. Overall, for gameplay, I do think genre fans will enjoy the gameplay here. I certainly did. However, it feels like we see everything the game has to offer way too quickly, which is always concerning in a game that's designed to be nearly endless. Nevertheless, though, I will be returning consistently now over the next few months because I'm sure that the expert builders out there, they will have some ways to surprise us, and hopefully alongside that journey, we will see the developer dropping more, patches. Visually, I like the game a lot. Our lead character packs a ton of charm in their animations with detailed motions for each action. Same can be said for the enemies, they move in their own unique ways. The cartoon aesthetic works really well for me, just easy to identify what's happening around you. And yeah, I think generally, visually, they've done a very good job. I will say though, I did note on a couple of occasions that designs can go a little off screen, making that next move difficult to understand, such as a pit you must grapple over. However, the object you're grappling to cannot yet be seen. Also, the same occurred with a few unimportant text boxes in the overworld where I actually couldn't read the entire sentence because it was being cut off. If I moved away from the character, that text box, it disappeared. In terms of audio, it's just okay. It feels like it doesn't always play on cue. For example, the sound of grass being chopped appears kind of randomized, and then there's not a lot of environmental sounds either. The music's also limited, which is disappointing, and there's one theme in particular that plays every single time you jump between exploration and design, and that gets extremely annoying very quickly. This probably explains why the only options available in-game are gonna be audio related. Overall, a Super Dungeon Maker has a good setup, but I can't help but feel that it still needs more content. While the dungeons themselves are solid and there are some good ones available already, the game lacks real options, and I felt like I saw everything it had to offer way too quickly. A performance patch for the variable frame rate, that would also be appreciated. Although I have been somewhat negative in this review today, it's only because I had incredibly high hopes for this release, and I do still think it's above average, and it's going to be a 6 out of 10 from me today. However, basically the game just hasn't quite realized its full potential yet, and I hope now the team behind it invests the time to really get it up to scratch. Let's see more options, let's see more, items that builders can use, and this could be something truly special. Will you be checking out Super Dungeon Maker on the Switch then? Let me know in the comments with that. Hit subscribe, join us here for reviews, deals, lists, and news daily. And I'll see you all in the next video. Thanks, everyone.